In the hushed courtroom of New Liberty City, murmurs barely stirred the air. Two officers, Sanders and Miller, stood in uniformed confidence by the side aisle, smirking as a black woman in a crisp, pale blouse walked in and took her seat in the gallery. "Look who wandered in," Sanders muttered, loud enough for the rows nearby to catch. "Bet she's here to cry about injustice or something." Miller chuckled, her voice low but biting. "Yeah, or maybe to support one of her cousins on trial. They always show up at the last minute, pretending to care about the law." The woman didn't flinch. She sat upright, quiet, her eyes scanning the courtroom like she belonged there far more than the officers did. Her demeanor was still, composed, but there was something in her expression, a calm that made others look twice. "She probably slipped through security," Sanders whispered. "You know how they are. Always think rules don't apply." Miller crossed her arms. "Let's just hope she doesn't pull a stunt. Last thing we need is another lecture on systemic bias or whatever the word of the week is." From the back, a clerk passed by and paused when she saw the woman. Her face shifted, recognition, then something like nervous respect. She nodded and moved on quickly. Sanders noticed. "What was that about?" she said. "Does she know her or something?" "Probably one of those activist types," Miller replied. "They know each other. It's like a club." Before long, the courtroom doors opened and the young assistant district attorney stepped in. He greeted the officers casually. "Everything good here?" he asked. "Peachy," Miller replied, glancing at the woman. "Just another spectator who thinks she's got front row rights." "She looks familiar, though," the ADA murmured, brow furrowing slightly. "Sure she does," Sanders said with a sarcastic grin. "Probably saw her on the news holding a sign." The judge had yet to appear, but the energy in the room had shifted. Conversations quieted. The woman remained unmoved. Her fingers flicked open a small leather notebook. With calm precision, she scribbled something down. Nothing dramatic, just the badge numbers on the officers' uniforms. They didn't notice. "Did you see her write something?" someone near the back whispered. "Yeah, she's taking notes or something," came the reply. Still, the officers went on, louder now, as if trying to provoke a reaction. "Guarantee you she's going to say we looked at her wrong," Miller scoffed. "They always twist it." Sanders laughed. "If I had a dime for every time someone said I was racist just for doing my job." The woman looked up. Her eyes didn't blink. She didn't speak, but the silence she held was loud. The bailiff entered. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Thompson presiding. Everyone stood. The judge took a seat. As the courtroom began its work, the woman slipped her notebook back into her purse and stood again. She walked calmly toward a side door marked, "Authorized personnel only." "Hey," Miller hissed. "Where does she think she's going? Should we stop her?" Sanders asked, already moving. Before they could, the bailiff intercepted them. "Officers," he said, "come with me. Now." "What? What?" Miller snapped. "It's about your conduct," the bailiff said evenly. "You want to follow me." Confused, the two officers followed him down the same hallway the woman had just taken. Their bravado faltered as they approached a small room with a table, a few chairs, and surveillance cameras in each corner. There she was, the woman, seated, calm, waiting. Sanders stepped back. "What is this?" Miller tried to hold her ground. "Who even are you?" The woman finally spoke. "You represent the law," she said, her voice even and low. "Do you believe your words earlier did the same?" On the table, a recorder blinked red. Click. The voices echoed back at them, clear, unfiltered. "Bet she's here to cause trouble. Hopefully, they find her guilty by association. She deserves 20 years just for walking in here." Miller paled. Sanders opened her mouth, but no defense came. "Who are you?" Miller finally managed. The woman didn't answer right away. She leaned forward slightly, her presence filling the quiet space. "I have access," she said simply. "I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to document one." The door opened behind them. Another official entered, a sealed file in hand. The officers turned, this time no arrogance in their eyes, just questions. And for the first time, fear. The woman stood. "You thought I was nobody," she said, walking toward the exit. "But that's the thing about silence. It listens longer than you speak." And then she paused. "There's more coming," she said. Then she walked out, leaving the officers and their arrogance behind. In the crowded courtroom of New Liberty City, officers Miller and Sanders leaned against the wall, laughing quietly. "Look at her," Miller scoffed, nodding toward a composed black woman in a plain gray suit seated silently in the gallery. "Acting like she belongs here." Sanders smirked. "She probably thinks she's here for some kind of justice. Give her 5 minutes, she'll be crying racism." The woman said nothing, her eyes scanning the room with calm precision. To them, she looked like no one. But something about her presence unsettled the clerk, who glanced at her nervously and dropped a folder. "What's her deal?" Miller muttered. The woman's silence only irritated them more. "Think they even checked her bag at security?" Sanders added, "Wouldn't be surprised if she brought drama instead of ID." Their whispering stopped briefly when a court intern approached. "Excuse me, do you know who that woman is?" Miller laughed. "Someone with a discount suit and an attitude." "That's who." The intern hesitated, then retreated. "All rise." The bailiff called as Judge Thompson entered. The woman didn't flinch. She calmly opened a small notebook and jotted something down. Badge numbers. "Did she just write us down?" Miller hissed. "What does she think she's doing?" "Probably another activist pretending to be important," Sanders said. When the judge recessed briefly, the woman stood and walked to a restricted access door. "Hey, where's she going?" Miller said, her voice sharp now. "She can't go in there without clearance." Sanders barked, suddenly uneasy. Before they could follow, a bailiff approached. "Officers, come with me." "Now, what's this about?" Miller asked. "Your conduct," the bailiff said evenly. Inside a plain, sterile room, the woman sat at a table. "Calm, focused, waiting," Sanders snorted. "You again? Who do you think you are?" The woman looked up. "You label me a criminal. You judged me without a word. That wasn't a mistake. That was systemic." Miller stiffened. "We're allowed to talk." "Not like that. Not in uniform. Not in public." 2 suited men entered. One dropped an envelope on the table. The other placed a sealed folder with a government crest on it. "What is this?" Sanders snapped. "Preliminary charges," the woman replied coolly. "Misconduct. Abuse of authority. Hate speech. You set us up." Miller shouted, "No. You revealed yourselves," the woman said, rising. "There's been a concealed microphone in this room, and in the courtroom, all day." Sanders paled. "This is a stunt." The woman's eyes sharpened. "This is accountability." Before they could respond, the bailiff returned with the same trembling court clerk. "Officers Johnson and Miller, you are requested back in court." They followed, hearts racing. The room had shifted, packed now, charged with tension, and at the center, no longer seated in the gallery, stood the woman. Calm, confident. A gold badge on her chest gleamed under the lights. National Directorate of Internal Security. Judge Thompson nodded at her. "Director." Miller staggered. Sanders went white. With the court's permission, the director began, her voice resonant. "I present evidence of racial bias and misconduct conducted by uniformed officers, recorded firsthand in this courtroom." Gasps filled the room. The judge gestured. "Proceed." The director's eyes locked on them. "I didn't come to observe today. I came to confirm." Miller's voice cracked. "Madam Director, we didn't know who you were." "That's the problem," she said. "You thought I was no one, and treated me accordingly." The judge opened the sealed folder. His brow furrowed. "This document authorizes an immediate review of your conduct and a full investigation into every case you've touched." Sanders raised her voice. "We were just doing our jobs." "Your job," the director snapped. "Framing citizens based on how they look? Mocking them in court?" The judge lifted a hand. "We'll review the evidence." In the gallery, a woman named Lisa squeezed her daughter's hand. "Who is she, Mommy?" the girl whispered. Lisa smiled through tears. "Someone who makes the silence shake." The director turned back to the bench. "Justice doesn't start with loud speeches. It starts with listening. Today, we listened." But just as she reached for her folder, a voice echoed from the back of the room. "Objection, Your Honor." Everyone turned. A man in a sharp navy suit stepped forward, face grim. Behind him, 3 more officers in different uniforms. Something was unfolding. The director's expression remained unreadable, but her grip on the folder tightened. The judge adjusted his glasses. And you are? The man held up credentials. Special Counsel James Halston, Department of State Oversight. I'm afraid the director may need to answer a few questions herself. Gasps rang out again. Murmurs swelled. Miller blinked in confusion. Sanders straightened, confused and suspicious. The judge looked at the director. Is this true? The director didn't blink. Let them speak. I have nothing to hide. But her eyes, just for a moment, flicked to the gallery. To Lisa. To the child. The future. And just like that, the room filled with silence again. But it was no longer the silence of dismissal. It was the silence before the storm.